The lecture hall buzzed with nervous energy as students from 12 different star systems settled into their seats. Commander Zara Chun stood at the front of the vast auditorium, her weathered face scanning the crowd of young cadets, who would soon become officers in the Galactic Defense Force at 45. She was considered ancient by military standards. Yet she moved with the fluid precision of someone half her age. Today we discuss something that makes most species uncomfortable, Chun began, her voice carrying easily through the hall's advanced acoustics. We're going to talk about why Earth veterans inspire fear throughout the galaxy. A Caltharian student near the front shifted uncomfortably, his blue-scaled skin rippling with anxiety. The bat-like Vorthans in the middle rows folded their wing membranes tighter around themselves. Even the normally confident Arctanian warriors seemed subdued. "Professor Chun," called out a voice from the back. A young Zephyrian female stood, her crystalline features reflecting the overhead lights. "With respect, isn't fear too strong a word? Surely it's just professional respect for human combat effectiveness." Chun smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Cadet Veltar, thank you for that question. Please, take your seat and let me tell you why your assumption is wrong." The commander activated her holographic display, showing a star map of known space. Red dots marked human-involved conflicts over the past century. There were hundreds of them, scattered across every sector. "Most species fight for territory, resources, or ideology," Chun continued. "They calculate acceptable losses, strategic value, cost-benefit ratios. They fight until victory becomes impossible or too expensive. This is logical. This is sane. This is how civilized beings conduct warfare." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Humans don't do that. We don't battle for victory. We battle to finish." A Caltharian cadet raised his hand tentatively. "What's the difference, Commander?" "The difference, Cadet Morden, is that victory implies an acceptable outcome where both sides can walk away with some dignity intact. Finishing means one side doesn't walk away at all." The hologram shifted to show footage from the Proxima Centauri conflict 20 years earlier. Grainy images showed human soldiers advancing through a burning cityscape, their movements methodical and relentless. "The hegemony thought they could take our outer colonies," Chun explained. "They had superior numbers, better technology, and tactical advantages. By every reasonable calculation, they should have won within 6 months. The conflict lasted 4 years. A Vorthan student spoke up, his voice barely above a whisper. "My grandfather fought in that war. He said the humans were like machines that couldn't be turned off." "Your grandfather was more right than he knew," Chun replied. "The hegemony kept expecting us to negotiate when losses became too heavy. They kept waiting for us to make the rational choice to withdraw. They didn't understand that humans don't make rational choices when we're angry." The footage shifted to show the final assault on the hegemony stronghold. Human forces moved like a tide of destruction, flowing around obstacles, regrouping after every setback, always pressing forward. "The hegemony lost 60% of their invasion force," Chun said quietly. "But that's not why they fear us. They fear us because we lost 70% of ours and kept fighting anyway. They fear us because when their commander finally offered surrender terms, our response was to send him the severed head of his second in command with a note that said, 'We don't negotiate with dead species.'" The lecture hall had gone completely silent. Even the usual sounds of shifting seats and nervous breathing had stopped. "But Commander," a brave Arctanian cadet ventured, "surely that was just one extreme example. Not all human conflicts—" "Cadet Dex Valoom, let me stop you there," Chun interrupted. "That wasn't extreme. That was Tuesday. Let me tell you about the Vegan Independence War." The holographic display changed again, showing a lush green world being bombarded from orbit. The vegan colonies wanted independence from the Earth Federation. Normally, this would be a political matter. Negotiations, compromises, maybe some economic sanctions. But the vegans made one critical mistake. She paused for effect. They killed human civilians during their opening move. Not soldiers. Not military targets, families, children, people who had never held a weapon in their lives. The bombardment footage continued. showing systematic destruction of every vegan military installation, every government building, every infrastructure hub. The vegan military was actually quite capable, Chun continued. They had prepared for a long guerrilla campaign, using their intimate knowledge of local terrain to make occupation impossible. They had stockpiled supplies, established hidden bases, recruited civilian supporters. They had planned for every contingency except one. "What was that?" asked a student. They hadn't planned for humans to glass their entire planet. Several students gasped. Planetary bombardment was considered a war crime by every civilized species. "The war lasted 6 weeks, Chun said matter-of-factly. "Not because it took us 6 weeks to win. It took us 5 minutes to win. It took us 6 weeks to hunt down every single vegan who had participated in the attack on civilians. We went through their records, identified every person involved, tracked down their families, their friends, their political allies. We didn't stop until every person who had known about the attack and done nothing to prevent it was dead." "That's genocide," whispered a Caltharian student. "Yes," Chun agreed simply. "It was, and every species in the galaxy learned a very important lesson that day. You can fight humans. You can beat humans in individual battles. You might even be able to defeat human military forces. But if you harm human civilians, especially children, we won't just kill you. We'll erase you from history." She deactivated the hologram and moved closer to the students. "This is why other species fear us," she said. "Not because we're stronger or smarter or better equipped. They fear us because we're the only species that treats warfare as a personal insult requiring personal satisfaction. When the Caltharian Empire goes to war, it's an extension of policy. When the Vorthan Confederacy fights, it's a calculated risk. When humans go to war, it's because someone made us angry, and we stay angry until there's no one left to be angry at." A long silence stretched through the hall before a small voice spoke up from the front row. "Commander Chun, I have to ask. If humans are so dangerous, so unpredictable, why does the Galactic Defense Force want us as allies?" Chun smiled, and this time there was warmth in it. "Excellent question, Cadet. The answer is simple. We're not your allies because you want us. We're your allies because you need us. Because somewhere out in the dark between the stars, there are things that want to hurt you and your families. And when that day comes, when some hostile force threatens everything you care about, you'll want someone on your side who doesn't fight for victory." She turned to face the entire class. "You'll want someone who fights to finish." 3 days after Commander Chun's first lecture, the same auditorium held a different energy. Word had spread throughout the academy about the human instructors, brutal honesty regarding her species' approach to warfare. Some students had requested transfers to other courses. Others had specifically enrolled to hear more. The seats were packed. Chun entered wearing full dress uniform today, her chest displaying ribbons and decorations that most students couldn't identify but somehow knew represented horrors beyond imagination. She moved to the podium with the same measured pace, but today she carried a small metallic object in her hand. "I see we have some new faces," she began, noting the expanded audience. "Good. Last time we discussed the theoretical framework of human warfare philosophy. Today we get practical." She held up the metallic object, a simple dog tag, worn and scratched. This belonged to Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez, 3rd Battalion. Earth Defense Corps. He died defending a Caltharian farming colony called New Harmony. Most of you have never heard of New Harmony, and there's a reason for that. The holographic projector activated, showing a peaceful agricultural world with rolling hills and crystal-clear rivers. Caltharian settlements dotted the landscape like jewels, their organic architecture blending seamlessly with the natural environment. New Harmony was what we call a soft target, Chun explained. No military installations, no strategic resources, no tactical value whatsoever. Population of about 2 million, mostly farmers and their families. When the Score Empire decided to test human resolve, they chose New Harmony precisely because it was worthless. A new student raised her hand. Chun nodded. "Commander, what exactly were the Score testing?" "Intelligence, Cadet. They wanted to know if humans would sacrifice military resources to protect alien civilians. The score are a practical species? They assumed we'd write off New Harmony as an acceptable loss and focus on defending more valuable targets. The hologram shifted to show a massive score war fleet approaching the planet. The ships were elegant, deadly, built for swift strikes and quick withdrawals. The score sent a full battle group. 12 capital ships, 47 support vessels, 30,000 elite troops. Against a farming colony defended by exactly 137 human soldiers on a routine training mission. Chun clicked to the next image, showing a ragged human defensive line dug in around the colony's perimeter. Standard military doctrine says you need a 3-to-1 advantage when attacking prepared positions. The score had a 200-to-1 advantage. This should have been over in hours. How long did it actually take? Asked a Vorthan student. 18 days? The numbers hung in the air like a challenge to physics itself. The first score, assault wave, hit at dawn on day 1. They expected token resistance followed by swift surrender. Instead, they met something they'd never encountered before. Humans who had been told they were the only thing standing between alien civilians and death. The holographic display showed tactical readouts, troop movements, casualty reports. The numbers painted a picture of systematic slaughter. By the end of day 1, the score had lost 800 soldiers. The human defenders had lost 32. By day 3, the pattern was clear. Every meter of ground cost the score exponentially more than they were prepared to pay. Chun walked closer to the students, Rodriguez's dog tag catching the light. But here's what the score didn't understand about humans. We don't just fight harder when we're protecting innocents. We fight smarter. Sergeant Rodriguez was a demolitions expert from the slums of Detroit. He'd grown up in gang territory where being clever meant staying alive. When the score tried to rush the main settlement on day 5, Rodriguez had a surprise. Waiting, the hologram showed a massive explosion. That took out an entire score armored column. Rodriguez had spent 4 days mining every approach route with improvised explosives made from farming equipment. Chemical fertilizer, fuel cells, anything that could be turned into a weapon. The score lost more vehicles in that one blast than they'd lost in their previous 10 campaigns combined. A Caltharian cadet spoke up, his voice thoughtful. "Commander, was Rodriguez following orders when he did this?" Chun smiled grimly. Rodriguez was following something deeper than orders. Cadet, he was following the human instinct that says some things are worth dying for. When the score fleet arrived, he could have evacuated with the colonists. Instead, he volunteered to stay and buy them time to escape. "But they didn't escape," observed an Arctanian student. "No, they didn't. Because something interesting happened on day 6. The Caltharian colonists came back. The hologram shifted to show civilian vehicles returning to the planet, loaded with anything that could be used as a weapon. 2 million Caltharian farmers armed themselves with hunting rifles, farm tools, and righteous anger. They said they weren't going to let human soldiers die alone defending their homes. The score suddenly found themselves facing not just stubborn human defenders, but an entire planet in revolt. Chun paused to let this sink in. By day 10, the score were requesting reinforcements. By day 15, they were asking for permission to withdraw. By day 18, they were begging for mercy. "What happened on day 18? Asked a student in the back. Chun held up Rodriguez's dog tag again. On day 18, Sergeant Rodriguez made his final stand. The score had finally broken through the outer defenses and were closing in on the civilian shelters. Rodriguez was the last human soldier still alive, wounded, nearly out of ammunition. He could have surrendered. The score would have taken him prisoner, honored the rules of war. She clicked to a final image, the crater where the main score command post had been. Instead, Rodriguez strapped on every piece of explosive ordnance he could carry and walked into their command center. His final transmission was 4 words, "See you in hell." The auditorium was completely silent. The explosion killed the score field commander, his entire staff, and destroyed their communications hub. More importantly, It sent a message that echoed throughout the galaxy. Human soldiers don't surrender. They don't retreat. They don't negotiate. When they're given a mission, they complete it or they die trying. Chun moved back to the podium, setting Rodriguez's dog tag carefully in front of her. The Score Empire officially surrendered 3 hours later. Not because they couldn't take the planet, but because they realized that even if they killed every defender, the humans would just send more. And those humans would be angry about what happened to Rodriguez and his men. A young Zephyrian student raised her hand tentatively. "Commander, what happened to the Score after the surrender?" Chun's expression grew cold. The Score Empire was dissolved. Their military leadership was put on trial for crimes against civilian populations. Their homeworlds were placed under human administration for 50 years. Their species was forbidden from developing military technology for a century. "That seems excessive for one failed attack," the student protested. "Does it?" Chun asked. "Let me ask you something, cadet. If someone broke into your family's home, killed your relatives, and then said, 'Sorry, it was just business,' would you be satisfied with an apology?" The student shook her head. The Score attacked New Harmony because they thought human lives were expendable test subjects. They learned that when you kill a human soldier defending innocent people, you don't just anger his government. You anger his entire species. And an angry human species is something no one wants to face. Chun picked up Rodriguez's dog tag one more time. Every human soldier carries one of these. It has their name, their blood type, their religious preference, if any. But more than that, it carries a promise. The promise that no matter where they die, no matter how far from home, someone will come for their body. Someone will come for their killers. Someone will come to finish what they started. She looked around the room at the mix of alien faces, all watching her with new understanding. This is why we don't fight for victory. Victory is temporary. Victory can be undone by politics, by economics, by changing circumstances. But when we fight to finish, when we fight until there's nothing left of the enemy but memories and warnings passed down through generations, that creates something permanent. That creates peace through the certainty that certain lines must never be crossed. As the students filed out after class, many of them cast glances back at the simple dog tag sitting on the podium. They were beginning to understand that it wasn't just a piece of metal. It was a promise written in blood and honored across the stars. The final lecture arrived with unexpected urgency. Commander Chun had been scheduled to conclude her series the following week, but emergency orders had come through during the night. She would be deployed to the Outer Rim immediately after today's session. The students sensed something different in her demeanor, not the controlled intensity they'd grown accustomed to, but something sharper, more focused. "Change of plans," Chun announced without preamble. "We're going to discuss something that's happening right now, not decades ago. 3 days ago, the hegemony made a fatal mistake. The holographic display activated, showing recent intelligence reports streaming across the screen. Most students couldn't read the classification codes, but they could see the red priority markers flashing urgently. The hegemony has kidnapped Ambassador Keeling's daughter." A collective gasp rose from the assembled cadets. Ambassador Sarah Keeling was known throughout the galaxy as one of the most effective human diplomats, credited with preventing at least 6 major interstellar conflicts through negotiation rather than force. 20-year-old Rebecca Keeling was taken from her university on Tau Ceti. She's a civilian, a student of xenobiology, never been involved in politics or military affairs, by every standard of civilized warfare. She's an absolutely protected non-combatant. Chun's voice carried a deadly calm that made several students shift uncomfortably. The hegemony's leaders believe they can use her as leverage to force concessions in the current border negotiations. They think they can trade one human girl for territorial rights to 3-star systems. They're about to learn why that was the worst decision in their species' history. A brave Caltharian student raised his hand. "Commander, surely the human government will negotiate for her release. Ambassador Keeling must have significant influence." Chun turned to face him directly. Cadet Morden, you still don't understand. The human government isn't going to negotiate. They're going to respond. What's the difference? Asked a Vorthan student. The difference is that negotiation implies both sides get something they want. Response means only one side survives to want anything. The holographic display shifted to show fleet movements across human space. Massive formations of warships were converging from every sector, more military might than had been assembled since the last galactic war. Right now, every human battle fleet is receiving the same orders. Find Rebecca Keeling. Bring her home. Remove the hegemony's ability to threaten human civilians ever again. An Arctanian cadet stood up abruptly. Commander, that's madness. The hegemony has hundreds of worlds, billions of citizens. You can't destroy an entire civilization over one person. Chune's smile was arctic. Watch us. She clicked to a new display showing the human fleet dispositions. The numbers were staggering, over 3,000 ships of the line, including vessels that were supposed to be decommissioned or held in strategic reserve. The hegemony has 48 hours from initial contact to return Rebecca Keeling unharmed. After that, human forces begin systematic elimination of every hegemony military asset. Every government installation, every industrial facility capable of supporting their war machine. But the civilian casualties ... whispered a student. Will be the hegemony's responsibility, Chun finished coldly. They chose to make this personal when they took a human child. Now they get to live with the consequences of that choice. However briefly, a new student, one who had joined the class only recently, raised her hand. Commander Chun, with respect, isn't this exactly the kind of disproportionate response that makes other species fear humans? One kidnapped girl doesn't justify galactic war. Chun studied the student for a long moment. What's your name, Cadet? Salandra of the Vorthek colonies, ma'am. Cadet Salandra, let me ask you something. Do you have family? Yes, Commander. Parents, siblings, a bonded mate. And if someone took your bonded mate, held them hostage, threatened their life for political gain, what would you want your government to do? Salandra hesitated. I would want them to negotiate for safe return. Would you? Chun pressed. Or would you want the kidnappers to suffer? Would you want them to pay a price so high that no one would ever consider touching your family again? The Vorthan student's membrane wings fluttered nervously. I suppose I would want justice? No, Chun said quietly. You would want revenge. You would want blood? You would want them to hurt the way you hurt. The only difference between you and humans is that we're honest about it. She turned back to the holographic display, calling up footage from a previous incident. 15 years ago, pirates captured a human freighter with a crew of 12. Standard piracy, they wanted ransom money and safe passage. The crew were civilians, cargo haulers, no military training. By galactic law, pirates who surrender after releasing. Hostages face only economic penalties. The display showed a human task force surrounding the pirates' asteroid base. The human response fleet arrived within 6 days. They offered the pirates one chance to surrender, release the hostages immediately, and submit to human justice. The pirates countered with ransom demands. What happened? Asked Morden. The humans waited exactly 1 hour for a response to their ultimatum. When none came, they cracked the asteroid open with deep core mining charges. Several students looked sick. All 12 human hostages died in the explosion. So did every single pirate in the base. The human commander's official report listed it as acceptable casualties in the pursuit of justice. No ransom was paid. No precedent was set for future kidnappings. The pirate clans learned that taking human hostages meant death, not profit. Chun deactivated the display and faced her students directly. You see, other species think we're irrational because we'll destroy our own people rather than negotiate with their captors. But there's a cold logic to it. Every time we pay ransom, every time we make concessions to save lives, we encourage more kidnappings, more threats, more attempts to use our compassion against us. So you kill your own people to send a message? Salandra asked, horrified. We kill our enemies to send a message, Chun corrected. Our people die because someone else chose to put them in harm's way. We make sure that choice costs the enemy everything they have. A communication alert chimed on Chun's personal device. She checked it quickly and her expression grew even grimmer. Class, we have a real-time update. The hegemony has responded to initial diplomatic contact. They're demanding human withdrawal from the Rigel sector in exchange for Rebecca Keeling's safe return. The students waited breathlessly for her reaction. Human Command's response was 4 words. You have 47 hours. Chin gathered her materials as if the class was ending. Commander, called out Morden, what happens if they don't comply? What happens in 47 hours? Chun paused at the door. In 47 hours, cadet, you'll understand why other species don't just fear human veterans. You'll understand why they fear the humans those veterans are protecting. She was almost out the door when Salandra called after her. Commander, where are you going? Chun turned back one final time, and for the first time in 3 lectures, she smiled genuinely. I'm going to bring a little girl home to her mother, and I'm going to make sure no one ever thinks about taking another human child again. As the door closed behind her, the students sat in stunned silence. Outside the Academy's walls, the largest human military mobilization in galactic history was reaching its jumping-off points. Soon, the hegemony would learn the difference between fighting for victory and fighting to finish. In deep space. Rebecca Keeling sat in a cell aboard a hegemony cruiser, unaware that her kidnapping had just triggered a response that would reshape the galactic balance of power. She was a xenobiology student who had never hurt anyone, never threatened any government, never done anything more dangerous than catalog alien plant species, but she was human. And that meant she was never truly alone across the galaxy. 3,000 warships carried a single message written in their targeting computers and encoded in their weapon systems. Some lines should never be crossed. Some prices are too high to pay. Some mistakes can never be undone. The hegemony had 46 hours to learn the difference.